contributed. I'm a bit deaf and I didn't hear all the questions, so I wrote down the issues that were raised and I'll do the best I can, but old age does impose burdens. First question I note was, what do I think of the Stop the War movement? Well, that was triggered by the SWP, and I think it's a classic example of exactly what it is I believe in. A campaign politically launched that is based upon the idea that we should get together to achieve a particular objective and not to produce a pure group who will be able to compare their credentials against others and say, well, at any rate, we've kept our impurity. So I think this Stop the War movement is a very good example, and it has had a profound effect. It didn't stop the war because the Prime Minister wanted it, but it has created circumstances where there is not a majority for the war in Britain, or for that matter in the United States. And that is a long-term victory, which I think we should credit. Now then there was a question asked about Northern Ireland. I hope I understood it properly, but I do remember the years of violence, and I was threatened with expulsion from the Labour Party for meeting Gerry Adams. I can't get to see him now because he's in and out of number 10 Downing Street all the time. But I think the decision to talk through the issues that had led to the bloodshed was right, and I think it will and has already created new conditions in Northern Ireland. Now then somebody asked about VAT and breaking the law. And I think if you ask about breaking the law, my question comes slightly differently. When an issue arises, the key question is, whose side are you on? Anyone can make a socialist speech, it's an easy thing to make, but when the crunch comes and you have to decide, are you support the miners or the NUM under Mrs. Thatcher, I mean the coal board under Mrs. Thatcher, you just have to decide what to do. And if you do decide the right decision, then out of it there is a pattern of credibility which I think is very, very significant. On the question of breaking the law generally, I think you have to decide whether in your mind it is a revolution. That's to say, you're breaking the law with a view to bringing about the physical surrender of the government of the day, or whether you think of it as, I think history proves, to be educational in character. I mean, Mr. Gandhi, whom I met when I was 6 years old, he was once brought up before a court in India at the time of the British Empire, and at the end of the case he said to the judge, you have a choice to make. He said, if you believe in this system, then you will sentence me to the longest sentence that you could imagine. But if you don't believe in the system of British occupation of India, then your job is to retire from the courts and join me in the campaign. And he was then put in prison for a long time. And that, I think, is the power of non-violence. Mandela, when he was in prison in South Africa during the apartheid regime, spoke to the prison guards, and he said, I am the only free man in this prison. Well, you work that one out. And who was that guy who died during the hunger strike in...
Bobby Sands.
Yeah, Bobby Sands. You see, before he died, he said, our revenge will be the laughter of our children. All I want is my children to be able to laugh. Now that's really powerful stuff, don't make any mistake about it. And to end up with a prison sentence for failing to pay your VAT is not quite the same. So I think you have to recognize that non-violent resistance is educational in character, and it does reveal the strength of some people's moral position, which has a very considerable impact. Now, a lot of questions were asked about the Labour Party, and of course the Labour Party is not a socialist party, but it has had socialists in it, just as there are some Christians in the churches, everybody knows that. I think myself as an independent socialist within the Labour Party, but if the Labour Party were to campaign as it should, then it would gain credibility, because at the moment what I notice if I go to all these big campaigns and I see people saying we support the miners, we support the pensioners and so on, but as far as the Labour Party is concerned, I've never seen a poster saying Labour supports the pensioners, Labour supports the mine workers. I mean, Labour simply says vote for us, and that is not an answer to the problems we are addressing. I've been through a strange experience in my life, because I know lots of people who were very radical when they were young, you know, joined the Communist Party and so on, and ended up on the right of the Labour Party. And I mean, there were one or two ex-communists who became MPs and ended up as Blairites. I used to think if you've transferred your allegiance from Stalin to Blair, that's a minor adjustment. Led me in quite an opposite direction, because I'm a curious person, and whenever I am, I'm a diarist, and whenever I am, I think about things. And when I became a minister, I realized that the power that we claim that we have when we vote is not really in our disposal at all, that these huge corporations worldwide have far more influence over policy in Britain than the government does, or the Labour Party does. And just to say Thatcher, Thatcher, out, 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 is not an answer if you end up with Blair in. And so I became radicalised by becoming a minister, and it made me a socialist from experience, and I think I just offer that to you as my explanation of why I remain in the Labour Party. Now, what other questions? Yes, why do people get corrupted by become New Labour? Well, let's take New Labour itself to start with. I think what happened really was we lost some elections after Thatcher came to power, and Blair and Mandelson and Brown got together, and I think what they said was, we'll never win an election unless we adopt Mrs. Thatcher's economic policy. And that's what they did. And New Labour was a Thatcherite party. Blair said when he became leader, he said, New Labour is a new political party, but I never joined it. And this, I think, is the explanation. And if you doubt what I say, remember when Mrs. Thatcher was asked once by a journalist what was her greatest achievement, she said New Labour. So that was what it was about. And I think what corrupts people, and when I say corrupt, I don't mean it in the crude sense, but if you come into the Labour Party with left-wing aspirations and ideas, and then you find you're a minister, and you're surrounded by civil servants who don't agree with you at all, and surrounded worldwide by powers that you didn't elect and can't remove, and you gradually adjust yourself to the status quo. And if you do that, you have really abandoned what you're about. But having said that, I know it's very, very difficult to make a change, because you are dealing with enormous powers outside, and if you can't deal with them easily, explain who they are and what they are, so people understand what needs to be done. Now, somebody said, are people able to reach decisions? Are they intelligent enough? Well, I don't know whether you share my view, but I'm very strongly of the opinion, and this is based on my experience of doing hundreds and hundreds of public meetings, I think the level of public intelligence is far, far higher than either the media or the top of the Labour Party give them credit for. And I think we must never accept